Stuart is the president of the Xtri World Tour, which is, we're about to find out how interesting of a time this could all be for all those who would like to race. So, Stuart, tell me some more about this Xtri World Tour. We know the championship is Norseman, but how did the rest of it come together? That had come about a lot sooner than the rest of them.
Well, the Norseman, the Norseman's been around since 2003, so it's the daddy. It's been around a long, long time. The rest of them began to appear in 2011, 2012 when we introduced one in Scotland, and then Switzerland. And then as time has gone on, more and more have been evaluated and been added to the tour to create something really nice and good worldwide coverage. And in fact, today, just a few minutes before we came on, we've just launched our USA race, or at least we've informed the public of it.
Oh, tell me more about that. I live in the USA.
Do you? There's a surprise. Yeah, well, there's a bit of speculation going on online in the last couple of days. People making the correct guesses that it will be in Utah. It's called Starvation Extreme Triathlon, and it's the Iron Cowboy guys who are going to be running it. So we've asked him to remove the iron from his name. I don't know if he's going to do that. But James has been doing a lot of our races, so he knows the sport pretty well. And they have a really nice product they put together there in Utah, based out of Park City.
What's it going to cost?
$450.
Oh.
Which is about the normal price for an Xtri.
That's actually really not that bad, considering how much the average price of an Ironman is.
Yeah, we tried to stay below that and still offer. I mean, obviously, the point of Xtri races is they're very sort of back to basics. So we don't have a huge amount of infrastructure to supply and pizzazz, red carpets, and all that kind of stuff. We don't do that, but we do employ a huge amount of safety, etc. So that's where our money goes.
I looked it up where that lake was, and it looks like the nearest airport is Salt Lake City. So that's actually. If I recall right, that is either a Delta or a Southwest hub on the West Coast. So people like me in Atlanta, you can get a lot of direct flights to Salt Lake City, which is nice, especially when you're flying with a bike and, you got to bring your own race support because that's what you have to do to your Xtris. So that's pretty convenient. I like direct flights.
Oh, that's good. Good for you. It's probably not direct for me.
Yeah,
but still, it's an easy place to get to. That's true. Although still, as we always say, we need to have a bit of an adventure involved. So yes, you fly to a hub, but then you need to get out into the countryside and get into nature.
Well, if you've never been to Utah, you'll see some interesting things there. It's a pretty.
Oh, I've been to Utah. Yes, I have. Yes, there's some interesting things and some very strange people, but most of the US is like that, isn't it?
Now, are you at every one of your races?
Well, certainly the first time. Certainly, I try to go to the prospect version so I can be there to evaluate the race. But usually we send me or another representative to the races once per year.
Okay, all right. Now, how do you determine what a prospect race is? Do they come up with the idea first, and then they come to you, say, hey, we would like to do this, or do you just look for places and talk like, hey, we would like to do a race here. Can you set something up and we'll see if it works out. If it does, we'll keep you. If not, we'll just disband
it. You make it sound so harsh, the process. No. Generally, well, two things happen. Either a race already exists, because there are a number of Xtris around the world which have started up in recent years, and they will contact us and say, are we interested? And if it's on our radar for the location, then certainly we'll have a look at that and we'll evaluate what they have as a product, because we have a number of values that we look for. There's a whole list of them. And sometimes people will contact us and say, we want to start a race here. That can also be looked at as a possibility, depending on their ability and background and event organization skill, etc. So there are various different ways we come about it. There's no set formula. A lot of it's to do with location, though. Location is really important.
Now, when we talked like last week, you were saying how North America is not a big market yet. Because, I just to guess off the top of my head, it looks like 80% of your races fall on the continent of Europe. So it must be a much larger thing there. I saw there was 2 in South America. You got 1 on Africa. That's a prospect race.
Prospect.
Yeah, you got a couple in Asia. I met a guy through Instagram who does a lot of your Xtris and from the United States, and he's going to sign up for Himalaya, man. I'm like, wow. So, I mean, that one sounded incredible to me.
Exactly.
So
there's two real things we have to consider there. One is the location draw. So, for example, Patagonia is a no-brainer. Nepal is a no-brainer. But we need to also try and build local athlete bases. And these places it's more difficult because the triathlons. There is a triathlon association of Nepal, but it's very small, obviously. So we need to make sure these races can pull in local-ish athletes as well as international athletes. We need to build the athlete pool in different places.
I got you. Now, that Himalayan, man, what was the, it's just, that's one of the more remote places I saw on there that I wouldn't expect to maybe even have any triathlon there. Like this, just the sport did not exist in this place.
Well, strangely, it does. I mean, that's what you expect, but there is a triathlon community there, but clearly not in that area. I mean, this is something we're going to take this sport right up into the mountains and right to somewhere pretty extreme, which is the whole point of our format, of course.
Is it so extreme where you can't even ride it on a tri bike that this is a race you should really have a road bike for? That's what it looks like on that course.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of our courses are more suited to road bikes. We'll never tell people that they have to bring a road bike rather than a tri bike because that's their decision. And if they're strong enough, a tri bike's fine. But certainly for some of the courses, a road bike is probably highly recommended. Yes.
Okay. Now, a lot of your runs, most of them have nothing to do with the road. And that, a lot of people aren't used to that. How do you mean? Is when you recommend to people who do your Xtris, do a lot of your trail running rather than spend your time on the roads to train?
Yeah, they are a real mix, and that's something, again, we don't force that on our organizers. If you look at the Norseman course, it's actually mostly asphalt, so it's or tarmac as it's called in most of the world. But more and more of our races have an element of trail running, even a bit of scrambling, some ridge running. There's all sorts of stuff in there, so you need to be multi-skilled from a running perspective for sure. And trail running is probably a good thing to have under your belt. Now,
it just so happens that a lot of these look like they're cold water swims. Is that just the nature of the extreme environment that provided with them, or is it just kind of?
It's not by design. No, it's not by design. It's a side effect of where they are. I mean, most of them are in Northern Europe, and that's where they were originally designed. And the water's cold. It just is. So, and then they're in mountainous areas, so therefore the water's colder up there as well. So that's not a deliberate thing. But then Brazil, of course, the water's almost too warm.
That's got to be bath water.
What's that?
That's got to be bath water over there.
Yeah, but if they're too hot, it's also difficult to swim. So it still makes it extreme.
Yeah. Now, what are the wetsuit rules for Xtri? I had a guy told me when he did the Alaska Man, when it was a prospect race for you guys, he's like, I wore a full body wetsuit, hats, gloves, on the boots too. And he's like, but I bought this neoprene vest to wear underneath. I didn't know if that was actually legal or not, but like, how much can you insulate yourself with neoprene and be legal?
Well, you can wear 2 wetsuits if you want, but you won't go very fast.
Yeah.
Because we operate under normal triathlon rules, but with dispensations. So when the water's so cold, and I mean, we're not going to put people in freezing cold water. It might be 11, 12 degrees centigrade. You can convert that later if you want. But what we do say is that normally in triathlon, you're not allowed to have gloves because that could give you an advantage, particularly if they're webbed. In some of our races, we allow gloves as long as they're not webbed gloves, just to give that extra little bit of protection. But to be honest, it doesn't make a huge deal of difference. The main core protection is where the warmth comes from. So a neoprene vest under your wetsuit is highly recommended and legal.
Okay. Nice. So tell me, what's the experience like at Norseman? I saw on every race I looked at that there's very little option for qualifying spots. You only have a handful at every race. It said, the top 2 finishers. You mean per age group, or you get 2 finishers per, for men and women to go?
Well, just to explain how that works briefly, and it's not really complicated because we don't have a ranking system. We don't even have age groups, in fact. So the normally Norseman operates under a ballot system. So you enter the ballot and you get pulled out of the draw and you get into the race, and that's been operating for many years. But what's happened in recent years with Norseman is they have so many applications. 5,000-6,000 people enter the draw for 250 spots. And that's why we introduced qualifying and random selection at our partner races. So that if you go and do a race, for example, if you go to our Slovakian race, it has a maximum number of 100 participants. So if you finish that race, you're then into a random ballot for a Norseman slot. And they have 4 slots. They have 2 female, 2 male random slots. And they also have 2 male, 2 female qualifying slots via the winners. So there are actually really good opportunities for getting into Norseman via another race. In fact, a better odd than going into the draw.
Now, I guess, are there any areas that you're looking at that you haven't planted your flag in yet that provide a good extreme environment? I mean, I know you're only in Canada and North America, just about to launch in in Utah.
Yeah.
But what about Central America anywhere? I mean, I don't know how well you know the geography of Mexico, but it's this tropical paradise. There's a lot of mountains and extreme environments. Mexico City is almost 8,000 feet in elevation. So,
yeah, we have a lot of things on our inquiry list, a lot of discussions ongoing with organizers around the world. But our strategy is to be a little bit methodical and a little bit slow about this. So it may seem slow, but we can't just go and open up 20 Xtri races next year because there won't be enough athletes for them. So we need to make sure that that people understand the sport and are drawn to it. And then, of course, because there are extreme environments everywhere, and most countries have some sort of countryside that we could use and make an extreme race from it. So yes, we have a number of places on our radar, but they're for the future.
Now, do travel logistics for your athletes, do they play a big role in figuring out a slot? You want remote, but not so far remote that it takes 6 hours to drive from the nearest airport to,
No, that's absolutely what we want. We don't want to make it easy. And in fact, even in some of our, the Scottish race, which you can see behind me in the poster, is 5 hours from Edinburgh or 5 hours from Glasgow, which are the 2 main airports. Even in a small country like Scotland, you can still get that.
I didn't think it's not that big. I didn't think you could get that far away from an airport.
Oh, precisely, yes. Well, you can. And that's all part of the adventure because that creates a journey to get to the race as well. And obviously, you're going through some incredible countryside.
As long as I don't have to see a Trump golf course, that's great.
There's none on that side of the country. You're safe.
Good. Yeah. So what are some of the most interesting races you think that you've started that you think are going to be a big hit within the last couple of years? I've talked to the director of Patagon, man. He's like, this race is something that anybody should really try because it's such a unique environment. And Patagonia, I probably never have a chance to go there outside of this race, but it's just such a beautiful environment that it's like I gotta try this. So
exactly, and actually, it would be unfair of me to say that it would be better to go to Patagonia than to go to Spain, for example, because every one of our races is designed to show off the nature of that country, and all of them are spectacular in slightly different ways. I think when you have Patagonia and Nepal, they immediately have a ring to them that's recognizable by everybody on the planet. But if I was to send you to the coasts of Spain and into the mountains round about there, then you would be just as impressed. And in fact, we ran our Montenegro race a couple of weeks ago, the first one we've done this year. And Montenegro as a country is just incredible. I mean, it is incredible. You've probably never heard of it.
No, I've heard of it. Every world war ends up starting in the Balkans somewhere.
Well, if you pay attention to wars, yes, you've heard of Montenegro. But as a country, as a landscape, I mean, it's got everything Patagonia can offer you. It just it's nuts. It's an incredible place. Without Chilean people, of course, they're different.
So, do you have any of your Xtri races that have downriver swims for currents to make it easy on anybody?
No, no, we don't do that. No, we try. I mean, I know some races do that, and then they have a longer swim that you do in the same time as you would do a shorter swim, that kind of stuff. We haven't got anything like that on our circuit at the moment, but we put them in lochs, we put them in lakes, we put them in rivers that don't have a current.
Yeah, definitely. And how many are actually in saltwater or brackish water? Or are they all? I mean, they're not all freshwater. I've seen the ones that I looked at, but the overwhelming majority.
No, you know what? I haven't counted, but I think most of them are probably in the sea, in saltwater. There's not so many are inland.
Okay.
But maybe I'd have to add those up.
Now, what are some of your goals that you have for the future for the Xtri World Tour?
Well, what we need to do is appeal to a wider audience. So we need people to understand that they're extreme, but they're not impossible. And actually, because we have our cutoffs generally are fairly generous, a lot of them are based on safety and not based on cutting you off for the sake of cutting you off. It's not some arbitrary time that we pull out of the air. So most of our courses can be finished if you can get through them like a diesel engine. Just work away all day long and you'll finish the course. So we need people to understand that, or not to be scared of these events. They're an experience in themselves, and you know, from a travel perspective and a culture perspective and a terrain perspective. So that's what we need to do. We need to get the message out to the world that be afraid, but don't be very afraid.
So how do you plan on getting that message out other than, you know, doing stuff?
Yeah, well, we have various plans of, you know, obviously opening it up to new audiences helps, and then having supporting events round about the races to bring people to see them and to experience them, and that kind of thing is and lots of other secrets which I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I came across Xtris, it was about 2 years ago, and it was by dumb luck because I wanted to see if I could get a triathlon done in every state, and I was using tryfind.com. And that's how I stumbled upon Alaska, man. I'm like, what is this? I have no clue what this is. And then I sat on it for 2 years. I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. And then, you know, with COVID here, and I don't know how bad COVID has affected you. You can tell me that in a second. But with COVID, it's like, all right, well, that put my plans on hold for this year and the next year too. It's like, so my process has just become more drawn out before I ever start my first Xtri.
Well, that's all right. You're a young guy. You got plenty of time.
Mm-hmm. So actually, how has COVID affected you guys?
Well, it's affected. We've only run the Montenegro race this year. Everything else has been postponed to 2021. And we still have a few lined up. The 3 races that we have left, the Taiwanese race, Formosa Man in Taiwan, which is end of November, that's scheduled to go ahead. And I think that will go ahead because most of the athletes are from Taiwan. So because they're an island and because they have the thing under control, more or less, then that should be fine. Then we have Brazil, which is still scheduled, but I'm not so sure about what will happen there. And Patagonia, they've changed the format, so they've cancelled the race as a full race for international athletes, and they're running it just for Chilean athletes. So they're doing a kind of localized version of it.
Okay.
And that's really it for this year. The only one we ran as normal was Montenegro, but it only had 14 athletes who were able to get there because the travel situation was so crazy. In fact, I drove there, as you said, in my Yugo. Yes, well, it wasn't a Yugo, but still it was 2,500 kilometers in either direction to get there.
That was about 33 hours of what Google Maps told me.
Something like that, yeah.
How many people did you get? How many people were in the car?
Just myself and our photographer, Kyoto.
Oh, well, at least
we didn't fight too much.
That'd be a long, lonely drive.
Well, listening to Kai's chat for that length of time was pretty bad too, but, we got through it.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of stuff you could talk about for 33 hours, it's not too bad. I don't know if I could do it with my mom. That would be horrible. Yeah.
Actually, what was the most interesting thing about that trip was we went through 7 different countries. And seeing the different coronavirus restrictions and rules in every country is crazy because they're all completely different. Mm-hmm. So you never really know what you're supposed to do. You just have to, wait and watch and copy.
On average, how long did it take to get through Border Patrol?
Mostly they were fine. Mostly they were not closed down for that. The most difficulty we had actually was in Montenegro, and that was nothing to do with coronavirus. That was the paperwork for my car they didn't like. But I think that's fairly standard procedure there.
They didn't confiscate anything from you, did they?
No, not even 20 euros, which is apparently how you get past.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, we managed to get through this pretty quickly. Is there anything that people who want to get into sport should know before signing up from one?
Well, I think we always say, I mean, the disclaimer there is that just believe in yourself. So we're not, even when we have a ballot, we don't analyze who enters the ballot and decide that you can come and you can't come. It's completely random. So you just have to understand your own limitations and look at the course and look at the structure and decide if you want to do it, then you're welcome. And it's always an amazing experience. And there are lots of forums on Facebook, etc., for the different Xtri races. Some of them are fully publicly open. It's worth going in and having a look and seeing what people are discussing, because they become a whole community and they grow legs over years and months where everybody starts to help everybody else, and it's a great community from that perspective.
Now, because you have to select your own race report, race supports. When I go to do that, what kind of qualifications should I be looking for out of the person that I know is going to be able to help me? Because a lot of these races, they're going to be with you on that run. So that's at least.
Well, generally the format is that there's only a bit of the run you need support for, and that was designed primarily from the Norseman's perspective originally. That the last 5K of the run is up a mountain, so you have support for morale, but also for safety, because if the mist comes down, then it's good to have somebody with you. Nowadays it's not quite so important because most of our races have GPS trackers, so we know where the athletes are all the time. But we still introduce that element because it creates that camaraderie. So often the support runner will only be needed for 10 to 15K of the race. You do also have to have a support driver to support you on the bike. But
can they be the same person?
It can be. It's often the same person. Yes. So it's a tough day out for them too. It's quite tiring. But some people will bring their whole family. Have granny handing them the water bottles and things. So, but your runner just has to be a similar standard to you, because we want you to stay together. We don't want you to leave your runner behind.
Okay. And what kind of vehicle do you recommend renting for everyone?
Like what would you call it?
Minivan?
Like a wagon or a minivan or something. Yeah, not a camper van.
I got you.
Please, not a camper van.
And so for the bike, I mean, you can't actually tailgate someone for a bike. You just kind of have to leapfrog them to be like, every 20K or something.
Absolutely correct. And good that you said that, because there's always a misunderstanding, and we always see people tailgating riders, which is a disqualification offence if we catch it twice, because it causes a traffic jam and it's dangerous and it's unnecessary. Just look at the map beforehand with your athlete and decide on your support points. If it's 20K, 30K, 40K, that depends on you and your needs, and just arrange to meet them at those points. That's a much more sensible way to do it.
Now, those cold water swims, I'm guessing that race support needs to be there to warm you up or find some way to get you warm, right? That's kind of one of the duties.
That's correct. And of course, you are allowed one supporter in transition with you, which is different from normal triathlon where you're not. So your supporter can have something ready, and often they'll have some hot water or some hot tea, hot coffee, whatever, to help you through and warm you up and help you get your clothes on, because when your hands are shaking, it's quite difficult to do a zip up.
So for the most part, since a lot of these races I've seen are point-to-point races, you set up that first transition in the morning, but that second transition, that's on your race support, because it's usually a decent amount of time away, and you wouldn't be able to hit both places in the morning before the race started. They have to be able to set that up before you get into T2.
Yeah, but there's effectively no setup for T2. T2 is just a place. I mean, we'll have race officials there, but it's just a place where they meet the athlete, and then they take the athlete's bike and put it in the car. So there's no racking or anything like that. Normally, sometimes there's a small amount, but T2 doesn't look like a normal transition area in extreme triathlon.
What elements do you look for to make a good finish line?
Well, we seek to have an exciting finish line where possible. So on top of a mountain is where we want to have a finish line if we can. That's not always possible due to local infrastructure. So if we take Keltman for example, because it's just the first one we came to that came across that problem, we can't finish on top of a mountain in Scotland because there's no infrastructure. There's no cable cars or ski lifts or anything in the area where we have the race. So the athletes have to come back off that mountain. So we just make that part of the race. They go over the mountain during the run, and then they finish at sea level. And that has its advantages and disadvantages. The one disadvantage is that it's not quite so spectacular, although at the side of a Scottish loch on a nice sunny evening is, of course, a nice place to finish. The advantage is that it gives us better medical coverage, so we can have the guys right there on the finish line with facilities. There's a warm place for them to go. They can eat immediately. They can get something to drink and have a rest inside the village hall. If they're on a mountain, obviously they're a lot more exposed. But where possible, we'll finish up high and bring them back down via chairlift or ski lift or something like that.
Now, I'm assuming, just by the nature of this, that your hotel options can vary from, a Hilton to small little bed and breakfast to anything in between is available. It just depends on where you're at.
Exactly right. You're pretty on the ball with this, I have to say, because we've seen homestays, camping, everything, and often you have to use everything because these are in small places, so the accommodation options are limited. And if you think about a full race of 250 athletes, that's 250 athletes, 250 supporters for them, plus family and friends and whoever else. So it's probably 1,000 people that you're bringing to this tiny little community. And the hotels are not set up for that kind of numbers in small places. So you'll end up with people staying in all sorts of bed and breakfasts and room shares and all sorts of things. And it doesn't really matter. It's great. It means the local people get involved heavily as well.
Now, say I have to fly to this race, and then I have to drive a little bit of ways. So that makes for a long day to travel that knocks out probably 2 days. How many days do you recommend putting aside to do an Xtri? I'm assuming this is kind of a little bit of a variable thing, because some people may say, hey, turn it into what you guys call a holiday or a vacation to us, and we'll make something of this. Other people, it's not like they make it the bare minimum, and it's not like when I go up and race in Chattanooga from Atlanta, where this is basically a day and a half trip for me. You can't do that maybe unless you live like within a couple hours.
No, I think that's important, because even as I said, with the distances from airports, even for the local people, because your population center, for example, in Norway is in Oslo, and that's 4 or 5 hours from race HQ. So even the local people will probably make a holiday out of it, and you'll need about a week realistically to put aside for the race. But many people, because of the spectacular locations we have, will make much more out of it. And that's why I think our sport, as much as anything, as much as triathlon, is adventure tourism as well.
The hard part about breaking into the North American market is the way our kind of employment system is set up, that we have absolutely no fucking vacation time. A lot of people
we'll just send people from all over the world to come instead, then that's no problem.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people have between 2 and 3 weeks on average. If you get more than that, then you found a pretty good situation. So, and I know,
I kind of forget that, because I live in Sweden, where we work about 2 hours a day or something.
Hey, look, if you can
I am exaggerating.
2 hours, I don't see what the problem is.
Well, you can get a lot done in 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, so, like I say, I browsed Reddit for quite a few hours just because I have to stay here still. Like, why can't I just go? So, yeah. Well, I think I've asked pretty much anything I could think of to cover the basics to get help someone get into this. Is there anything you think I haven't covered that we should all know?
Just the fact that they need to go and enter an Xtri, and just do it. Don't be scared of it. Just go and get stuck in. And yes, there are what we haven't covered is the fact that there's no prize money. And that's always been the ethos of Xtri. You get a finisher shirt if you finish the race. And the finisher shirt for the guy in first place is the same as the finisher shirt for the guy in last place. Because we don't mind how long it takes you to do the race. It's all about that personal challenge.
Yeah, I've said not even so much the challenge, that you're doing the race for the experience itself. It's not like an Ironman where it's a corporate feel. you're trying to go fast, and then the next time you do one, you're trying to PR. It's like
well, that's another thing. You can't compare courses because although we, the original course, the original Norseman course, is the same distance as an Ironman course because that's what they used as their metric. But now, because we use the landscape and the local areas have all sorts of complications, then the distances are only approximate. So you could never compare one race to another directly to try and get a PB. That would be impossible. And they'll have different amounts of ascent and different temperatures of water and all that kind of stuff.
So I guess the take-home message when you do an Xtri is, soak the moment in and really enjoy it and enjoy the scenery, because you're not going to see anything like this no matter which one you do.
Precisely, and also soak yourself in an ice bath beforehand.
Well, in some cases, that swim will be your ice bath.
Well, it's preparation. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I heard the director of Patagon, man, said it's pretty cold. So.
Yeah, he wouldn't be lying when he says that. No, it's cold in there.
Yeah, anything in a fjord, I assume, is cold. Which I've never up close seen a fjord before. We don't have those in the U.S.
No, well, it's just the sea with some steep sides.
Yeah, we definitely have to. Well, Stuart, thanks for giving me some time this morning.
No problem, Eric. Good to talk.
All right.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
Look forward to doing my first one.
Good lad. We'll see you there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for watching another Sunday morning conversation. If you liked what you saw, please do like and subscribe. And if you want to see more of them, click the little bell notification and it'll tell you whenever I post another one. Thanks again, guys.